Good morning, students. I hope you guys are doing well in midst of the striking that's happening everywhere. So today's topic is foundational studying strategies. And this chapter should actually be chapter 1, where this is the beginning. What is studying actually? How do you study? How do you make sense of this thing we call studying? So today we need to be discussing what does this actually entail? And to be able to do that, we have to go through this list of what studying is actually about. We need to talk about listening and concentrating, note-making, summary, and also reading, organizing, and lastly, memorizing. So we have to go through all of this just to make sense of this concept of studying. And as usual, to make sense of this, we need to be able to explain each one of these words and also be able to understand why is this significant to our personal growth and well-being, and then what's the practical something you take out of today's chapter. Now, the thing is, to understand this fully, I would like to link studying and concentrating and reading. I would like to compile that into linking them to each other. But let's go through it, and then we can make the linking happen as it goes on. So, studying, your academic success is actually hanging on the string of being able to practice and employing, meaning applying this chapter. If you can apply this chapter into your life, it means that you can actually become a master of the content, and that will enable you to learn new material. Now, the idea of learning, when does learning happen? What is learning? And I would like to give a synonym for learning, another word, and this isn't generally speaking the truth, but I would like for your understanding, for us to link learning with another word. And this word is change. Every time you learn something, change happens. If you do not learn something, change does not happen. So far in this year, I want to ask you, how much have you learned? Meaning, how much have you changed? And learning means that this is actually an active process. When we go through that list that I've shown you earlier, you will see that all of this is an active process, meaning you have to take part in it. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. So let's start with listening. To understand listening, we need to be able to differentiate between two words. The first one is hearing, which is an automatic process. It's something that we do. We cannot switch it off. It's what it is. And then listening is an active process where we try to find something out of this content. So it's an active process we are busy with. It's something that we are busy with trying to expect to find something in this conversation. There's this quote that I really like. This quote says, "Reading is the exploration of the inner space," meaning that while you are reading, you are comparing what you know with what you are reading. And if it agrees, it's easy for you to accept that content. But if you disagree, usually we throw it away. But with reading, we have this open-mindedness that we want to understand where this thing is coming from. This person is conveying a message. We want to understand that, and then we want to ask questions to get to understand this, and then we make a call. But if we do this too soon, we're not really understanding what's happening here. So for us to listen, we need to expect to find something. So we want to make sense of what's being said. To do that, we need to ask questions, like I said. Also, when we are hearing the lecture until the comprehension is complete, we are trying to understand what this person, if it's a lecture, fine, but what this person is trying to convey to us. And sometimes we use different ways of explaining it just to make the content easier to understand. For instance, if I would say space travel, it is impossible for human beings. If I say that, a lot of you will be thinking, no, but it is possible. What about NASA and Elon Musk? And what about Richard Branson? What about all of these people? Okay, so now you stopped listening to me because you think my point is invalid. But if you just give me more time, if you ask questions, if you give me more time to explain my point of view, maybe you'll get to understand where I'm coming from. Okay. So the previous handbook we had, Kanari, he said, but the active listening is involved listening, meaning we're involved in this process of trying to understand, trying to make sense of this content. And the listening actively is a decisive act, meaning you decide to do it. It doesn't just happen. And then where you put your focus and your attention on the speaker and the message, watch for cues, making notes. And this is incredible. While you are listening to a lecture and you're making notes, your brain is actually saying we have to be involved to make notes. So it's an automatic process now if you're trying to make notes. If you don't make notes, there's a very, very, very good chance that you are busy with hearing and not listening. Okay? So when we are making notes, we are actually telling our brain to be actively involved. Okay? And then active listening, the purposeful and requires concentration and critical thinking. Should this thing happen like this? Is it like this? Asking questions to make this clearer. It's an active process. So active listeners, they have well-organized notes so that the content makes sense. Reading their headings, subheadings, filling in the details, you can hear the summary coming there. And then they listen with a positive frame of mind. If we have a positive mentality when we approach material, it's a lot easier for us to memorize that material. You will remember in high school that the subject that you liked most was the ones that you did best in. And it was easier to learn that subjects as well. Okay, have a positive posture of involvement, trying to show the content that you want to learn this. Okay, and then effective listening is built on the three basic skills, namely attitude, do you want to do this? Your attention and the adjustment. Are you willing to learn, change? Okay. Then Stephen Covey, he said, but first we need to try and understand before we want someone to understand us. If we do that, we open up the ground to get to know the content first. And it makes us more appropriate. It makes misunderstanding less to happen. The chances of it happening a lot less. And then he said, but there's some listening mistakes we make. First of all, judgmental listening. Listening, but not really listening. We are jumping to conclusions about the speaker. Then selective listening, you're only hearing what you want to hear in this conversation. Impatient listening, you're finishing other people's sentences. Egocentrical listening, while someone is talking, you're thinking about what you are going to say when they stop talking. And then patronizing listening, you're pretending to listen, but actually you're somewhere else in your thoughts. Lastly, stubborn listening. You're listening, but you're not open-minded. You're already closed-minded. You're already thinking, this person, how can he not think space travel is possible? Okay. Then concentrating. Concentration lasts about anything between 40 minutes and 50. Maybe 30 minutes, 50, depending on age and practice that you've put into this. So what happens is this is a selective process where you choose to put your attention on something, put your concentration on something. But if you're actively involved, if you say, but you want to get to understand this material, and if you're making notes, you're employing yourself constantly to be actively involved in this. And then learning is so much easier for you to happen. Then we have internal and external distractions. Inside meaning like tiredness, hunger, stress, anxiety, things like that. External is outside noises, hearing things you cannot put off. Your phone that's ringing next to you, a lot of external things that can also be distracting you. So the great idea would be, when you know you're going to study, to eliminate as much as possible the external and internal distractions as far as possible. Then, if you block out a time for you to study, what you're actually saying is, brain, we're going to be studying now, so focus. And that actually helps your brain. It orientates your brain for what's going to happen next. And that also happens when you go to bed and you're going to study on your bed. Your brain is orientating itself to say, but we're going to sleep now, and then you fall asleep while studying. But if you have a desk where you always study, and now you go to that desk, your brain is saying, now we're going to study. And it makes it a lot easier. Then the crux of the matter when it comes to concentration is we need to discipline ourselves. We need to set up a bunch of patterns and practice those patterns, because that's what disciplining is. So that we can study, listen, and apply all of these techniques. Focusing on a chosen project, don't multitask. Telling yourself what to do and then do it. Organizing your time, and then mental tenacity, meaning the strength of your mentality. How easy is it for you to keep the concentration there? So, making notes, lists, taking breaks, maintaining a balance, that is things that helps us to actually make this whole process of concentration easier. Then, when we want to maintain a balance, if you have a task and it's too easy for you, and you have a skill and your skill level is too high, then the outcome will be that you are bored. But if the task is too difficult and your skill level is too little, the outcome will be that you experience anxiety. But if there's a nice balance between the task and the skill, you will be motivated. And in chapter 6, we spoke about this. We saw the teeter-totter, that you can either make yourself heavier or you can make the task lighter. So this is the same thing we're discussing just now, using columns instead of a teeter-totter. Okay. So, note making. When we make notes, it should be things that we understand. It's permanent, but it should be a condensed version. So, making a summary, for instance, having all the information on the summary, and then just making the necessary notes next to the summary, adding information that the lecturer speaks of in class. So yes, actually you should make a summary before class, come to class, make the notes, that's helping us to understand better, and then after class you just review it, and then your summary is complete. Notes is a permanent record of what's happening. So in class, there's a lot of content that the lecturer talks about, but they don't say it, it's not in the handbook, it's not necessarily in a specific place. It could be a personal experience, it could be something else that they are trying to convey. Like when I spoke about the understanding, that is something that you will not find somewhere else. Okay. And now, if you did not make notes, it's gone. You can't find it again. Okay. Then, it's something that's not available elsewhere. It's facts that your lecturer considers important. Also, tips and guidelines, trying to understand the content better and your understanding. Okay. So think before you write, because your summary is already a condensed version of it. So every time you add an extra note, it's trying to make this idea clearer. That's the purpose of note making. Keep it brief, organized. Use your own words, leave space, maybe if you want to add notes after class. Use 1 page per chapter. That's a good rule to follow when you make a summary. Okay. Then the 4th step is reading. So I would like to connect the idea of reading with a conversation. So if you have a conversation and someone does something like this or does this, you can see that this person isn't involved in this conversation. And we do the same thing with reading. So you need to be involved in this conversation of reading to really benefit from it. So first of all, when we read, we just survey through the chapter, just page through it, and then skimming the information, trying to get the headings, the subheadings, and then scanning to try and find out what does each one of those words mean in the chapter. And this is the same idea of the roadmap and library smashed into each other. This is the P2R method. What this implies is you have to preview the information, like skimming, and before we get to the next P, you need to see that all the chapters, they follow a specific pattern First of all, there's a title, introduction, ending. Then there's a subheading, unused elements and pictures. So it usually follows this pattern. So it's preview, reading, and reviewing. So you see it's a P2R method. So reading, we are trying to understand the content. So asking questions helps us to relate the information to knowledge that we already have, helps us to understand the content. To relate the concepts to everyday experience helps us understand this. So shadowing someone that's in the career that you want to pursue helps us to understand the material now better. So relating evidence to conclusions, so and examining the logic of the argument. So having a positive attitude when reading. Like I said, every time when we come to content and we are positive, it's easier to get that information inside of our minds. But if we are negative towards it, our brain just shuts down and it's difficult to get the content inside. Read for ideas, ask questions, manage time, reading process, and see where you are in this, scheduling time for reading. When you schedule time every day for reading, it's almost like you tell your brain, I'm going to read now. And it helps you to read better and faster. Have a purpose for reading. Don't just read because there's nothing else to do. Have a purpose for reading, seeing meaning in it. And how to keep your motivation and interest high as well. Control the concentration, like we said, using studying strategies and memory techniques, which we'll discuss. Underline and annotate the material where necessary. Make organizers that helps you to understand the content. The process is easier. We're going to discuss that just now. Okay. So summarizing, I think we've discussed this a lot in the past. So we're just going to go quickly through this. It's just making a summary on one page. I've shown you the Cornell formal outline method. I'm trying to condense the information. Okay, this is some ways of organizing it as well. If you don't like the Cornell outline method, you need to also understand that our brain has two hemispheres. It's considered that the left side is a logical side and the right side is a more creative side. So if you make a Cornell outline method, it's usually a very left side brain type of summary. But if you can make a summary using both sides of your brain, it's even better. And allowing all of your senses into the studying process makes it easier. So trying to find ways to do that actually can benefit you. Then organizers, something like a concept map. Oh, it didn't show pictures now. There you go. A comparison chart. So you'll see this is the two options we have, and this is a list of what the definitions of each are, and also what the description and the significance is. Flashcards, it looks like here's the concept and then all the components and how it's defined. And with a process diagram, you see the process happening. So it's like autumn, then it becomes winter. Autumn, and then it becomes winter. After winter, it's now the word is running away from me. I hope you can help me. After that, it's summer, and then we have autumn again, then we have winter again, and then we have, what's that word? Spring. Thank you so much. Spring again, and then it goes like this. Or we also have a process diagram that starts with 1, 2, 3, 4. Like eat breakfast, get dressed, go to school, come home, sleep. We also have a process diagram for that purpose. Comparison chart. So here we go, like a comparison concept map. Here's the concept, the 4 phases of prioritizing, and we have the 4 phases over here. But we can also use it like this, the hierarchy diagram. We can also use a process diagram like this. Now you see the summer, winter. And then we have a functional diagram that is the pie chart. We also have a cluster diagram, the roadmap and library idea. Comparison chart. Okay, so this is just examples when to use which one. Now memorizing. To memorize, it's a difficult process, but if you understand that you have a sensory memory, your sensory memory, your senses are triggered, and then it comes to your memory. So if you see something, if you hear something, if you smell something, any of those things, it gives you information, and then even hearing, gives you the information. It's like a rock you're throwing into a lake. So there's waves, but when the waves dies down, the memory is gone. And then we also have long-term and short-term memory. If you can make these waves go longer and last longer and it's bigger, it goes to your long-term memory where you cannot forget it. And then your working memory, it's almost like your RAM of your brain. How quick, how fast can your brain think? And the more things you think about, the slower it becomes. Your RAM gets full. Just like your phone's open tasks. Then the process of memorizing. Using your five senses helps us to memorize. So retaining and storing information, then we have to recall it. So we create a book, put a row there to fetch the information, but then we need to be able to recall it. I saw at the test that a lot of students, they were studying without reading the headings, and for that reason they struggled. They could have gotten more marks, but because they didn't read the headings, the information didn't know where to go. This is some memorizing technique. First of all, we have imagery, meaning making images of the content. Visualizing, making the information more exaggerated, associating the information. Pictures, making drawings.